Welcome to our
Hello, and welcome to your weekly dose of wedding wellness. This is 52 Till I Do, the real talk wedding planning podcast where your wedding besties walk you through the process as if we were planning together for a year.
Each week, we'll break it all down so you can stay organized, inspired, and totally in love with the process.
I'm Laura. I'm the founder of Merriment, and I'm here with
Amethyst. I'm the director of operations here at Merriman.
So whether you're planning a backyard bash or a ballroom blowout, we've got the tips, timelines, and insider secrets to help you plan with confidence and celebrate with style.
Grab your partner, your notebook, and some champagne. Let's start the countdown to your big day. Welcome to our first full episode of 52 Till I Do. Today, we're going to cover managing the overwhelm that comes with wedding planning. We'll get into talking about the division of labor throughout this process. We will talk about 5 wedding planning truths that Laura and I have learned along the way. And of course, my favorite part, we are going to give you that reminder that throughout all of this, remember to celebrate this milestone and this time in your lives. But to get us started, let's talk about managing the overwhelm. Like I said, the planning process can be overwhelming, and it's just really important for you to remember that you are not alone during this time.
Straight up. I think this is a thing that I want to shout from a rooftop every time, that this process is overwhelming, and you will never hear me say that working with Merriment or going through this process is ever going to be stress-free. It is a stressful process, and we can make it less stressful. That is the vibe here. It is overwhelming. We can make it less overwhelming. There are things that you are going to encounter for the first time in your lives. The sticker shock of planning the celebration. There's going to be family dynamics. It can be overwhelming. And I'm not sure that I've truly ever spoken to a single couple where there wasn't some element of it that felt stressful or overwhelming at some part along the way. So we are here to walk alongside you in that process. You are not alone. This is a well-worn path. And so we can help, assist with those elements along the way.
And the whole point of this podcast, too, is to deliver information to you as you need it and when you need it.
Exactly. So it's I feel like a lot of the times when you do a Google search or you look on some of these things, right, you get a to-do list that has 300 things on it, legitimately. And that is incredibly overwhelming. That's incredibly intimidating. And I'm here to tell you today that you don't need to do it all at once. There is a sequential sequence of events that make a lot of sense here. And you're going to get that information exactly when you need it to process that and to move forward with your planning process.
And speaking of those 300 things that might come up in your Google search, it's really important to remember too that you really only have so much storage, like a computer, right? You can only do so many things at once. So here at Merriment, we really encourage you to focus on no more than 3 things at a time. Limit that work in progress section so that way you can give your full attention and your full energy to those things, get them off of your to-do list and move on to the next.
I mean, Amethyst, you sound like a little project manager over here. Have you done this before?
It's my educational background. Making to-do lists was a regular part of educating my students.
Well, right. And that's part of it too. It's you can have a million things bouncing around in your brain at any given time, especially in wedding planning, right? You've got all these vendors to consider, all these elements for the day. And if you don't really hone in and get to done on a few of them at a time, that noise can lead to that overwhelm. It can lead to that stress. And so what we're focusing on is really targeting that energy towards a few things at a time. Like you said, no more than 3 is generally my recommendation. Getting those to done, checking them off your list, and then moving on to the next thing.
Another great way to manage overwhelm during this time is to really consider the division of labor throughout this wedding planning process. There are no right or wrong answers here, and it truly is this wide spectrum of who's going to do what, how involved each person is. It's really up to you.
Well, right. And let's talk about that a little bit more, because I think this is very, very real. And I suspect that a lot of our listeners here, right, are consider themselves brides. And in the industry, what we typically see, right? Brides tend to carry the load of planning. And at Merriment, like, again, we believe that there's no right or wrong answer to that. We love to see equally involved partners in this process. I think that's incredibly important to have both of your visions represented in the day. But there really is that spectrum, as Amethyst mentioned. So on one end of it, we've got one partner who is pretty much planning the whole thing, and they tell their partner like when to show up and what to wear, right? Like that is one far end of the spectrum. And the other end too is, this equal division of labor, and that can be broken down in a couple of different ways too. So there's no right or wrong answer for where you fall on that spectrum, as long as you have communicated those expectations to your partner and you're both in agreement about what that means and what you ultimately want in the engagement process and the wedding planning process. So let's talk about that further end of the spectrum too, where there is more of that division of labor rather than an individual kind of running the show. I really see this in two fundamentally different ways. One is where one partner is completely responsible for a task. That's transportation, that's the hotel wedding block, that's florals, whatever that may be. They take full responsibility for that item. They're the ones sourcing the vendors, they're having those conversations, they're making the decisions, they're moving on from there. That is absolutely one completely valid way to move about this. The other way to consider that too is where it is the two parties coming together on every single topic. They're sharing their opinions, they're on a shared email thread, they're doing all of those things collaboratively together. Pros and cons to both of those, and we'll certainly break those down as we go along. I would say when one person takes responsibility for a task, that is more efficient, right? They can go at their own pace, they can do it on their own. Whereas, like, if you are moving together in parallel for various items, while that may be less efficient, that is certainly our most collaborative approach to this. So we're going to talk a lot more about that as we go along. But the point that I really want to make here is that regardless of where you fall on that spectrum, regardless of the roles and responsibilities, as long as you have that shared understanding with each other about the division of labor, that's the important part to consider at this point.
Should I offer up an example here or no? Do you feel like we
dope. Do it.
exhausted that? From my own personal wedding experience, my husband and I sat down, we talked about the things that were most important to us as individuals, which we will get to in a separate episode. But I landed on not really having a particular vision or preference when it came to florals, but my husband had a very strong drive and he
Oh my
really
gosh.
wanted to have florals. Like
I love
he
that.
just really wanted that, and that was something that I was like take it or leave it kind of situation. So speaking of that division of labor, taking two separate tasks. He took lead on finding the florist, on interviewing the florists, on building out our like floral plan. He designed my bouquet, our centerpieces, quite literally everything.
Wow.
I just went to one final meeting just to see some of the flowers for color purposes, just to make sure that everything aligned there, especially with like we did DIY table numbers, right? So it was
Mhm.
just like a quick little look at all this work I've put in. And it was fantastic because one, it wasn't a priority for me.
Mhm.
So I didn't have to think about it. And two, it was a priority for him. He got exactly what he wanted. And it was just really nice to be able to share in that together.
Oh my gosh, I love that example. That is absolutely like beautiful and fantastic. And what I know about your husband also like right on brand. So it's
I
so
was
good.
just about to say, Laura, you can speak to that firsthand. Makes perfect sense.
Well, and Amethyst, what I love about what you just said too, it's like really holding true to your priorities, like focusing on those elements that are important to you. And I think that is as good of a segue as any into like these wedding planning truths, right? Like these things that we have time in and time out known to be really true in the planning process, regardless of your circumstance or regardless of the couple. So give us a little rundown, would you,
Absolutely.
of
I
some
would
of
love
these
to.
truths?
The first thing that you will hear us say, and you will hear us say it time and time again, is that you are not alone in this process. Another important thing to remember is that this date is about you and the love you share with your partner.
Yes.
Nothing else. Another thing that we've learned is that both time and dollars are limited resources. And I can't wait to say more about that. I really can't. So good. When it comes to budget, there are limitations about what you can afford and what you want to afford. We've also learned that people want to help, but they may not know what to offer, or you just might not want what they've offered. And finally, and maybe most importantly, it is completely okay to change your mind. Just because you said you're going to have a chocolate fountain at your wedding doesn't mean that you actually need to have a chocolate fountain at your wedding. It's fine. Change your mind 100 times. This is your day. So let's start at the beginning. Let's break all of those down.
Oh, I was so ready to talk about chocolate fountains. Yes, 100%.
I was really ready to get into the chocolate fountain. Sounds amazing. Maybe we should have one. Anyhow.
Yeah.
Back to the whole, you are not alone. I feel like we've talked about it on this episode, but just another reminder, another plug that you are not alone during this process.
Well, right. And so much of what we're talking about here and what we're focused on is around like setting those expectations, sharing a vocabulary with each other. Like, just know that every episode, every step along the way, that is the emphasis here. And that will be really our focus of each of the conversations. If we're really getting into those first truths, right? The one that I want to dive into a little bit more is like, this is about you and your partner. Asterisk, caveat, number 2 bullet. This is also the curated group that you have brought together to celebrate your day. These are your friends and family members, your VIPs that are important to celebrate with. And if I really think about like why I love wedding planning and why I have chosen this as my profession, it's that piece of it, right? It's that curated group, as small or as large as it may be, and really kind of balancing that, you know, that this is about you and your partner. This is the love that you share with each other. And it's about bringing this curated group together. So the thing that I super want to emphasize here, and again, we will talk about this ad nauseum, is you cannot let that group around you be the thief of your joy. And you have complete autonomy in this process to toss away any of those traditions that don't align with you. You can toss away those opinions. You can toss away, you know, anything that you are receiving from the outside that doesn't feel aligned with you and your partner. You have permission here to do away with those and to focus on those elements that are important to you and your partner.
And to add to that too, tossing away the traditions that don't align to you, make up the traditions that do align to you. There is no right or wrong answer here.
Absolutely. And the way that you get to that day is super important. And, you know, as corny as it sounds, right, we believe that you can enjoy the journey as much as the destination in this case. And that's one of the core principles here at Merriment. And along with that is, you know, both your time and your dollars are limited resources. You will trade your dollars for a vendor's expertise, or you will trade your time and stress to figure it out. So this can be food, this can be lighting, this can be florals, right? You know, some of those elements that we frequently see as DIY components, and we love DIY, right? We are
DIY.
We are pro DIY here, absolutely. And like being really thoughtful and intentional around where we spend those dollars. But that thoughtful and intentional part like comes with thought and intent. Okay. And so if we have string lights that we're considering hanging, do you want to become an expert on hanging string lights? Like, do you
My
want
husband did want to become the expert in hanging our $6 string lights from Target.
Amazing.
But not everyone wants that.
Well, right.
And not everyone has the time for that.
Not everyone has the time. Let's talk about like venue availability. Like, do you have even the option to get in there and do that type of thing? Or do you need to enlist the skills from a trained professional in that space? Let's talk about florals, right? Like that's another one where that sticker shock is real, right? Like,
Absolutely.
regardless if we're talking wholesale, if we're talking florist, like that sticker shock is real. And so, very commonly, people want to go down the path of a DIY floral option. I love that solution, right? But there is a lot of risk associated with like doing it for the first time, or doing like test runs with it a number of times in advance. How much time and energy and dollars at that point are we really saving? And so all the time we talk about at Merriment is value driven decisions. If you want to do DIY florals because that sounds like a fun thing for you to do with your bridal parties and your aunties and whoever might be there on the day, amazing. Like, let's
Do
do
it. Go
that,
for it.
right? Yeah, like if that sounds like something where it's like, yeah, this is something where I have always envisioned like this particular thing. I've got a very, very clear vision on it. Like I want to execute that myself. Amazing. Right. Or if it is something where it's causing you stress, like it is causing you anxiety, thinking about like, how am I going to hang these string lights? How am I going to do these florals? If that is not an enjoyable part of the process, off board it. So like that
Absolutely.
is
Get it
right.
off your plate.
Right. And we will talk a million times around budget, right? That is an inseparable part of the wedding planning process. And we've got all the stats, we've got all the details here, but there ultimately will be limitations to what you can or would want to afford.
Like the
Um,
chocolate fountain.
like the chocolate fountain. Oh my God, let's talk about chocolate fountains for a second. Mine was an ice luge. I wanted to do shots out of an ice luge at my wedding. So we
Oh,
ultimately did not, because of value driven decisions. But
absolutely.
that was one thing where I like went pretty down that rabbit hole before. I was like, no, Laura, come back. Come back.
Incredible. Incredible.
But like, there are going to be limitations to that. And that is a completely acceptable path to explore. And the final point on this, too, is, and like related to DIY, related to all the things we've just discussed, is people want to help you. These are, again, your closest loved ones around you. And they may not either know what to offer, or if they offer you something, you may not want it. So let's kind of talk about that just for a second.
Totally. So, some examples here would be like if one of your VIPs, one of your close loved ones wants to act as your photographer for the day, or if maybe they offer to make your wedding cake for you. These are just some examples that we've seen along the way. And there's two options here. You can absolutely graciously accept that offer. You can say, yes, thank you, rather than no, thank you.
Mhm.
Um, but also feel empowered to be like, I love this idea. Can we do blank instead? So, like, especially for that cake, right?
Mhm.
I love this idea, but maybe would you be willing to make the cake for my bridal shower instead?
Yes.
Or I love this idea. Thank you so much. Will you take our engagement photos
Yes.
instead of our wedding day photos? There are opportunities to still accept that help if that's what you want to do, but also pivot it to a space that makes more sense for you and your value driven decisions.
Well, right. Because I mean, like in those situations too, I want those people to be fully present on the day, right? If your
Absolutely.
auntie or your BFF or whatever, if they want to take your photography, like that's a very high stress element of the day. And you may find yourself where it's like, yes, that's actually my vision. That sounds fantastic. That's great. Go for it. But if you're feeling sort of that reluctance, that hesitation, you can pivot that, or you can graciously say no and move on from there. That yes, thank you phrase,
Love it.
as a we love it, right? And that's something that my therapist has worked with me for a long time on, is like being able to accept that help, saying yes, thank you.
Absolutely.
That is a complete sentence, and that is completely acceptable. I want to talk really briefly though on if we ask for help, if we reach out to individuals, that there is the reality here where they say no, right? And so we need to go into this process also not expecting a yes. These people are autonomous adult human beings. They can make their own decisions. They want to participate in this in their own way. And so just know that if we ask, like, hey, hosting a bridal shower or attending my dress fittings or, doing the sweets for a sweet table, whatever that may be, they're going to come with their own set of motivations and priorities too to that situation. And so anytime that we do ask, we can't expect a yes in that outcome. So being really emotionally prepared for that, I think is super beneficial there.
Is it time? Can we talk about my favorite truth?
Amethyst, it's time.
I'm so ready. My favorite truth, the thing that if anything sticks from today's episode, the thing I want you to take away today is that it is okay to change your mind. I keep joking about this chocolate fountain, but it is such a good example, and maybe it resonates a little too deeply with me. Change your mind 100 times as you are going through this process, and then change it 100 more. Just because you say you're going to have something, just because you want something today, doesn't mean that 6 months from now, you're going to have that same conviction. Or thinking about that budget doesn't mean you're going to have the same room in your budget to have that thing. Change your mind. It's fine. It's
Absolutely. And
completely fine.
what you're going to hear us preach along the way is really balancing these two extremes of checking things off the list, but also like checking in with yourself. Like, how am I feeling about this process? How am I feeling about the decisions that we've made? One of the next things that we're going to focus on is really setting your priorities. And by having that really, really solid foundation, what is it actually that we want to accomplish with our wedding and our wedding day? You can always reference back to those shared priorities and those personal priorities and say, okay, are the decisions that we're making in line with that, or are they deviating from that? And I've got a whole lot to say on that topic, certainly. But fundamentally, in what Amethyst is saying too, it is okay that if you've gone into this process and you said XYZ, along the way, you have discovered within yourself and your relationship that is no longer a priority. Let's pivot. So I could not agree more.
It's my favorite one.
Absolutely.
Change your mind.
I think you might have one other favorite if that's as good of a segue as
Ooh.
any.
Now that you're saying this, is this along the lines of remembering to celebrate throughout
Sure
the
is.
process? Oh, I'm going to say that's actually my second favorite. I'm sticking with okay to change your mind as my first favorite. Yeah, you are not locked into anything until you are. But seriously, though we've talked about stress and decision making and all of the things that come with it, take time to just take a breath. And please don't smack me when I say take a breath. I know we feel that, Laura. We feel that
Yes.
don't tell me to breathe kind of situation. But here it's so true. Take a breath for a second and just like think about the space that you're in and celebrate all of these moments leading up to such a big day.
Well, absolutely. And the thing that I really want to emphasize here is that the phrase the wedding of your dreams, not everyone feels that way. And that is a shorthand for us when we're talking about it's a memorable, special, magical day with you and your partner. We are not making assumptions that you have been planning this your whole life or that like your default mode is to like celebrate all the details and everything else. So we're going to remind you throughout the process. We're going to have like scheduled date nights. We're going to have like
my favorite.
oh, so good. Like we're going to encourage you to like order in some takeout and like have some tricky conversations, or we're going to go and like encourage you to do a brunch and we're going to have mimosas, right? Like we're going to have fun things along the way. I will get off my soapbox with 3-letter F word for fun. I do think that this can be a fun process. But again, like we are not expecting that you're coming to the table thinking like, oh my God, like this is going to be amazing. Like we are going to like celebrate every moment. Like that's not the vibe. That's not what we expect you to feel. And so I just really want to level set there with like expectations. I feel like that's kind of it. Like those are the things, right, Amethyst? Like
those are the things.
We
Here
did it.
are.
We did it. So as we're starting to wrap up here, really the next thing that you can expect in this podcast is around setting your priorities. So we've got a really thoughtful, intentional approach to understanding like where you're coming from for all this. So please do stay tuned for our next episode as we dive into that topic.
And as always, go ahead and give us a follow on social media. We are on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Pinterest, all the places that you can find us. visit our website to read along with our companion blog. And as always, please send us your questions. We want to make sure that everything we're talking about is relevant to you.
As we wrap up here, just thank you so much for joining us here on 52 Till I Do. Join us weekly as we shell out expert wedding guidance focused on style and substance. Signing out for now, your wedding besties.
Helping you stay organized, inspired, and totally in love with the process.
Okay, love you, bye.
Okay, love you, bye. Is that a thing? Are we doing that?
Yeah, we're doing it now.
Good. It has to be a thing.